Hey, welcome everybody. Welcome to this amazing LinkedIn Live conversation that we're going to be having with NAW fellow Mark Dancer with some just absolutely great work and great thinking that he has been doing and bringing to all of us throughout distribution. We're going to have an amazing conversation about some of the research and books and documents that he's created. Number one, the seminal research called Innovate To Dominate from NAW. More recently, his distribution leans in stories of resiliency, of innovation during the COVID-19 pandemic. And then we're going to be talking about his view on the future of B2B. We've got a great 30, 40 minutes lined up for you. Come on in. Thank you so much for being here. Let us know that you're here. Say hello in the comments section where you're calling in from or where you're listening in from. We'll be sure to give you a shout out when you do so. And come on in, say hello, and we're going to get started in exactly 2 minutes, okay? Here you go, everybody. Come on in. All right. Welcome. I am so glad to see you. You guys, the reason I took out my phone while that was going on is you guys should see Mark Dancer in the green room dancing to that music and the like. But I was the only one that got a chance to see it. So this is going to be a great conversation. And thank you all for coming in here again. As you come in, please say hello. Let us know that you're here. And if you have any questions, comments, please put them in there. We'll be watching them and I can bring those to Mark for you. So Ruth, man, it is absolutely amazing to see you here. Thank you so much for all you do for all of distribution and all the great work that you and everybody at the NAW does for us all. Thank you so much. And Ted, aren't you dirked out yet now? So Ted, thanks so much for being here, man. I know you're looking forward to this conversation as well. So we do have a great conversation lined up right now, and with my good friend, Mark Dancer. And so if you don't mind, let's bring Mark in and say hello and get this thing started. There he is.
Hello, Dirk. Hey, how are you? Happy to be here. I'm so excited. And I was riffing on you as I was doing a little bit of moves in the green room. So very excited to be here today.
Yeah. And you want to know something, Mark? I don't know if we are the two that should be dancing in public, so maybe keeping it in the green room.
My two boys would definitely say no. I used to, when I used to drive them back and forth to school, with some of their friends, I would put on music that I thought was good, and I would sing to it, and they told me to stop because it was embarrassing. I asked them if I could do it with them, and none of their friends said no, that would embarrass us. And I said, so what if I'm driving by myself and you're not in the car? Can I play my music and do a little dancing? And they said, no, just knowing you're doing it would embarrass us. So I don't think I'm the right person.
Ruining them for life just because your desire to groove a little bit, huh?
That was my goal. Yes, yes.
Hey, Mark, look at this. Our good friend from Canada has joined us here. Paul, great to see you.
Hey, Paul.
Yes, saying great things about Ruth and the work they're doing at NAW as well. So thanks for being here. Okay, Mark, let's get into this. I am really pleased that we've come together in the green room. We were saying, you know what? Why is it taking us this long to do this, right? It's probably been about 6 years ago since I did the research for the NAW and wrote the book, Innovate, how successful distributors lead change in disruptive times. And then you went and have done amazing research that, took my thinking even further, right, for today. And that book came out last January, right?
It was officially launched pretty much right before the pandemic hit. Yeah. Not great timing for a book launch, but that's when it happened. And it was, I had a number of, it was published. We talked about it at the NAW Executive Summit, did some industry events, had some great momentum, some great feedback, and then the pandemic hit. Yeah. But that's when it came out. Absolutely.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And you know what? I look at it as perfect timing for the pandemic, right? Because it's all about innovation, right? And to dominate, the name of the book is Innovate to Dominate. If you haven't gotten it, I encourage you all to get over to NAW and buy that book if you haven't yet, and read it and research it and highlight it all and act on it. But I think it's perfect timing because, we don't want to just dominate in good times. We need to dominate in the pandemic as well, right?
Well, it's the Innovate to Dominate is the 12th edition in the Facing the Force of Change series. Yeah. They're published every 3 years, so 36 years. And we made this edition consciously, working with NAW. We made it less of a report on best practices that you should implement now. And we really took a stab at kind of creating a roadmap for distributors to innovate. Yeah. One of the first things I found was that I talked to distributors about how far they had gotten in terms of innovating or modernizing their business for the digital age. I said, why can't you go further? And then I looked for ideas, sometimes outside of distribution. Yeah. And I found that there's a whole body of knowledge about innovation, right? But it's almost always product innovation or technology innovation. Yep. How does a business, which is fundamentally a resell business model, how do they innovate? And so Innovate to Dominate was a shift in facing the forces of change and try to create that roadmap that we can follow ourselves so we can drive things forward.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you. And it's absolutely incumbent upon each of us in our business as leaders to do exactly that. So, the book came out, the research took like 18 months, if I something of that nature, or 12 months. And then it came out right before the pandemic, and bam, our businesses were upset. If there was ever time for innovation, and there's been some great innovation, we'll get to that resiliency later. But what are the 1, 2, or 3 key lessons that you wrote about in Innovate to Dominate that really cemented themselves during the pandemic?
Well, we get right into this in the first chapter. When I was talking with distributors about what their philosophy of innovation was, right? There's just, in general at the time, there was a lot of conversation about moats, and what Amazon business is going to do to us, and how do we identify our best accounts, and how do we keep them. And all of that's really necessary, but it's very defensive, right? And we're on I found very quickly that the distributors that I had the best conversations with, they had the defensive strategy, but they were going on offense. And the way to go on offense was to, whatever line of trade you're in, whoever your customers are, figure out, they're all wrestling with the same issues that distributors are. What does digital transformation do to us? What does AI do to us? What does social change do to us? And so the first chapter says, and it's the most important finding, says the best path for the distributors to find the future for distribution is to help your customers get to the future,
Love it.
right?
Yeah.
And that's a really hard thing to do,
Yeah.
right? Because you can't ask your customers how to innovate your business,
Yeah.
right? So in that chapter, we kind of tee it up. We give lots of distributor quotations on what that means. And then we suggest some tools and some processes that distributors can do to really engage with their customers, help them get to the future, and then work backwards to your business model.
I love that. So if you don't mind, let's drill down on that just a little bit, okay?
Yeah.
I'm really interested in you sharing some of those practical things. So
Yeah.
what you brought up to my mind is my definition of innovation that I wrote about in Innovate.
Yes.
My definition of innovation ties right into what you're saying there. My definition is leading customers to a better future
Yes.
for which they are willing and capable of rewarding you, right? And
Yes.
I think that ties right into what you were saying there. And it's all
Yes.
about leading. If you ask them what to do, they don't know.
Right.
So,
Right.
so expand upon
Well,
your thoughts.
yes, you can't ask, because if you could ask your customers how to innovate your business, it's like a manufacturer asking how to create a game-changing product. If it was that easy, but so it's not about asking, but it is about listening,
Yeah. Okay.
right? And so there's a number of tools, but the one I really like is Clayton Christensen's Job to Be Done
Yep.
format,
Yep.
which is a tool and it's a culture, and it really says that. It says, doesn't say you don't ask your customers why they should buy from you. If you're a manufacturer, it doesn't say don't ask them what you should make. It starts with a fundamental question about, what would they hire you for, right? Which means, what are their problems? And that can go to the things that are, if you use that methodology and you use that kind of approach, it can go to the things that distributors very logically deal with. Delivering product, taking orders.
Yep.
But if you ask, if you think about your customers and you say, what's your job? What are your goals for your job? What's your profession?
Yeah.
So, you may be a facilities manager or an engineer, but you want to advance and, you want to be at the tip of your profession and know what your profession is about. You can help with that.
Yeah.
You can say, what teams are you on? What are those teams wrestling with?
Cool.
What's your organization trying to accomplish? What would you hire me to do on the front end of your business and the way you go to market, right? And so it's not just a tool that you use once in kind of a research methodology. It's really about a culture of using a new language, because if you use new language, you'll think differently and behave differently about how to get hired for things you haven't been hired for in the past. That's innovation.
I love it. How to get hired for the things by your customer that you haven't been hired for in the past. And
sometimes your supplier can be your customer too.
Say that
right?
again, Mark?
Sometimes your supplier can be your customer in that framework, which is a totally revolutionary concept.
Interesting. Right? Interesting. I want to go there, but hold on one second, okay? Paul says jobs to be done, right? Is absolutely the thought process there. And I know Paul has taken this concept to Ceratech in a big, big way. So you gave us some real good ideas and some of the types of questions that we should be thinking about and asking to really understand, right, how to lead the customer forward.
Yes.
An example that comes to my mind, Paul, and then Mark, I'm sorry, and then I'd love to hear if you've got others, is Chuck Cohen at Benco Dental, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what they do at Benco Dental, I haven't seen this repeated anywhere. And what they have done, which I think is brilliant, is everybody on their executive team is written in their job description that they have to spend at least 10 days a year out in the field with their dental customers in the actual practices. Now, now this is not to go solve a problem, right? It's not to go sell because it's a key account. It's to do what you just said, listen. And the beauty of that is when they do that, each executive, at least 10, when they come into their strategy sessions, right, they have over 1,000 data points, touch points of what's going on. So I think that's one example that we can all use.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? Do you have other examples? Yeah.
What I love about that is that you can't innovate without a culture of innovation.
Okay.
And so the idea that culture is not a statement of values that you pin on the wall, right? Which it often is. It's the flavor of the month, right? Culture is something really practical. And I was at Hay Group for a while, which is an HR consultancy,
Yeah.
working on these issues, which was like wacko weird. but one thing I learned there was they had a science about culture and how to build it. And it's values, but it's also behaviors.
Yes.
And from an innovation perspective, this is what leadership should be doing. They should be thinking about what are the top behaviors that we can, because you can observe behaviors, you can measure them, you can train on them,
Yeah.
right? You can ask customers about your behaviors. What are the behaviors that are going to drive your business forward? And what are the ones you're going to focus on? And I think that may not be the way they Benco came up with their strategy,
Right.
but that's an example of a specific behavior that leadership can try to do.
Well said.
And you can measure it, and it pulls you forward, and it pulls your culture forward when you do that.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. Do you mind if I give maybe one other quick example, and then
No, of course not. I love your examples.
Yeah, this example of culture. I go back to Jay Steinfeld, who found Liens.com. And one of their values, i.e. behaviors, is experiment without fear. And so what they actually did was, outside of the marketing department, they had 2 huge test tubes. And every time the marketing department experimented, right, had an experiment, they took a clear marble and put it in the left test tube. And then every time one of those experiments succeeded, they took a colored one and put it in the right test tube. So which test tube had more marbles? The one on the left. Because we failed more often than we succeeded. But it was the behavior and the culture that said, innovation says we are going to experiment, and we're going to, right, until we find the solution.
And so an example, an extension of this is, I was in the Navy way back when. I went to the Naval Academy, and I was going to be a Navy officer. But Marines are part of they're naval officers. They're part of it too, right?
Yes.
They're the men's department, as they say in the Navy. But at the time, there was a lot of discussion about whatever you were in the Marine Corps, your job was to make the grunt on the ground successful, the soldier with a gun. And you could be a lawyer, you could be a cook, you could be a procurement or a paymaster, right? And so I've seen, I don't know if it's by design or not, but I've seen a number of distributors, when I ask them about their culture, they say similar things. They say everything we do is about, I know a global distributor that's in the baking industry. And they focus like on lightning on the baker, right? Or an MRO focused distributor who focuses on the maintenance technician, right? And when you say that, you can say, we do a lot of things for a lot of people or companies, but it's the maintenance, it's the baker, it's the facilities manager. You can focus the entire on, it's real at that point. About you're trying to make that person successful in their job.
You betcha. I love it, Mark. Thank you. So I do want to get to your latest distribution liens in, but before we do that, let me even back this idea of pulling the customer to the future. Is that how you worded that?
I think so. Yes. Yes.
Okay, pulling the customer to the future, and I talk about lead. Okay, so I love the concept. Right on, and you're helping us think about how do we truly take this jobs to be done model as a tool to do that. But you also, before that, you talked about AI and digital transformation and social change that our country is going through right now. And so I think, if the way I understand it, that's another pillar that's required to lead our customers into the future. And I talk about it in terms of peering into the future, connecting the dots, understanding the trends and forces that are going to impact not only our business, but the customer's business as well. It sounds like you wrote about that as well, or you got some ideas.
Well, this is a good introduction to Distribution Leans In, which is the subtitle is Stories of Resiliency and Innovation During the Pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic. What I found there was that, which goes right to what you said. The opening quote says that, and I hear this over and over again. The first thing distributors did in the pandemic was shore up their own business, right? Could they get their products? Could they manage their cash flow? Were they going to stay liquid? Would their employees even show up to work, right? But once we got past that, the best distributors, the ones that really did a lot of innovation during the pandemic, said, "How can I help my customers?"
Cool.
Right? And the big picture on this, which goes to what you're talking about, is that this pandemic was a very human crisis,
Yes, sir.
right? And so when distributors, when they help their customers, they might have used technology, but it was about human benefits for their customers. Every time you read, every time as I was doing the research and in January and February, talking to tons of distributors about this, right? Every time I read in the news that businesses were being forced to lock down and then start up, I knew from my conversations with distributors that they were helping their customers through that, right? I think distributors is one of my messages. Distributors are resilient organizations,
Yes.
but they are a reservoir of resiliency for our economy.
Yes,
Right?
absolutely.
Distribution is a $6 trillion industry. We kept businesses in business. And that is in the macro, that's a socioeconomic impact. That's huge, right? It's distribution's value, which we kept us going.
Can I
Right?
jump in there real quick?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I agree with you 100%, and let's build upon that. So, I had this concept in the middle of the pandemic called shift to tomorrow. Let's lift our eyes to the horizon.
I saw that.
To come out
Yes, I love
stronger and all that. But one of the things I talked about there, Mark, and I think we collectively, NAW, every other trade association, Unleash, Mark, I think we got to do a much better job at this. I call it the noble calling of distribution, the noble calling of distribution. You mentioned it.
Yeah.
It's a $6 trillion industry, the third largest economy on the planet, behind
Yes.
29% of the GDP of this country, only smaller
Yes.
than the US and China's economy. And we do more is my premise, than provide the product on our shelves. It's everything you said.
Far more,
Right? Yeah.
right? It's if you are in the plumbing industry or the welding industry or industrial industry, you are part of that industry.
Yes.
Right? And everybody at a distributor should understand that, including the accountants and the warehouse workers, not just the sales field marketers. We're part of enabling that line of trade.
Yeah.
Right? And when we do things, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're right. That enabling that line of trade, we're providing jobs, we're providing purpose,
Yeah.
we're providing meaning, we're providing growth opportunities. It's
And
amazing.
I like to think of it as the craft of distribution.
Tell me.
Because I've heard this definition of craft, which I just love.
Yes.
Craft is art with a purpose.
Love it.
All right. And so, if we think about the distribution, yes, it's numbers. We have to be efficient. It's productivity measures. It's all those things we do. But distribution has a superpower, right? And we allowed all this discussion about disruption to diminish what we are, and we've forgotten what our superpower is. Distribution superpower is that we live and work where our customers live and work. Right? Amazon does not do that.
Yeah.
They can't do that, right? And so under this idea of distribution as a craft, that means, and it's art with a purpose. Our purpose is to enable the human outcomes that our customers are trying to achieve. That means on-time delivery. It means getting TCO-bound products, but it also means making them successful in the way they live their lives and do their work. One of the opening stories in Distribution Leans In is from by Mike Sane at Material Handling, and they do material handling equipment, of course, in the Southeast, I think. And he said our big goal during the pandemic was for our people and our customers was to keep them safe and keep them working, right? The safe was the COVID, but work provides income for your family. It provides a dignity associated with work. Work gives us purpose. And that was their kind of guiding principle to get them through the pandemic and their customers through the pandemic.
That's amazing. So tell me more about, and you're talking about it now, tell me more about this. What did you say? It's this human element, the human.
Yeah.
I feel strongly, what I'm thinking a lot about is the human spirit, that we are in a unique position as leaders,
yes,
as local independent businesses to, and I think the pandemic is going to really be a major inflection point on our responsibility to focus on the human spirit, that it's not just
Yes.
about the job, it's about helping people grow. It's not just about, clocking in. It's about helping people fulfill their potential. And I think we got
Right.
a long way to go there, but it sounds like you're hearing.
No, I'm right with you on that. I mean, this is strategic, but it's really important. And if we're carving out, distribution's role, socio and economic role, and helping us all live our lives and do our work, we have to have these conversations. I'm trying to use the word human first innovation for what distributors should do, right? And for a number of reasons. One is that as we do more and more of live more of our lives virtually, and we do more and more of our business virtually, artificial intelligence, online buying, we as humans will want a greater outcome from the things we're doing in the real world that we're doing with humans.
What do you mean
It
by
has
greater outcomes? What do you mean by greater outcomes?
well, when I grew up, bread was Wonder Bread
Yep.
and coffee was Folgers,
Yep.
right? And so this really thin slice of now I buy my bread at an artisanal baker and I buy my coffee at a specialty coffee shop because I want those are human deliverables for me in my life, right? And I want a delivery which has the person who makes it is vested in the product and the service they provide,
Yep.
and they're striving for something better and better. And what they offer, I cannot get online.
Yeah.
Right. And so that real world
So,
experience is being elevated. And I
so
think we
is
can
it is
offer
it
that in
is it
distribution.
is that
Yeah.
another way of looking at the customer experience? There's something
Yeah.
deeper than, but there's something, it's deeper than quote unquote what we've
This
been talking about
this is
customer
where
experience.
the language of innovation fails us and we can push new boundaries. How do we make the distribution experience better for our customers? We're kind of working on the e-commerce side, right? We use that but that's a virtual experience, right? And we know the measures and metrics associated with that, right?
Yep.
I don't think we have a really good language yet for how do we make the human experience that our customers have with distribution,
Yeah.
right? But we need to think about that because that's our superpower,
Yeah.
right? How do we get there? So one example of this, I ask distributors all the time how they measure their customer relationships.
Okay.
And I hear things like repeat purchases and share of wallet and which customers are profitable for me.
Yeah.
And there's two things about that. One, customers don't give a crap about any of that.
Right.
You do, but they
It's
don't.
completely internally focused. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's nothing human in it.
Yeah.
So I then say, well, do you want your customers to trust you? And they say, of course.
Oh
I say,
yeah.
how do you measure that? How do you measure trust?
Yeah.
Do you want your customers to feel like you're committed to their cause? Yes. How do you measure that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But if how to create the experiences that help our customers trust us more, that helps us feel like we're committed to their betterment more,
Yeah.
and measure that in human terms,
Yeah.
that's the upward slope for distribution.
Yeah. Mark, I think that's brilliant. And I think, and thank you for bringing it to us. Right. And it sounds like that was a key theme in this
I'm looking for
distribution
it. Yeah.
leans in. Is that right?
Yeah. Distribution leans in is it's got 10 numbered stories and then two more. So there's some bonus stories in there.
You're always
And
adding value, buddy. You're always
it's an e-chapter. It's not a book.
Okay.
And my idea is that as I was doing all this and I was hearing all these wonderful things about how distributors are really leaning in, and I want to come back to that term,
Okay.
right? And they're helping their customers, right? I'm thinking, well, this is fantastic. Every distributor is impacted by the pandemic.
Yep.
And so every distributor should be interested in learning what we all did during the pandemic and what that means for our business going forward, right? So working with NAW, we're trying to, we package this as an e-chapter. It's easy to read. It's not expensive, right? Because we really feel like, this, as a fellow, I tried to write something that every distributor could get and would want to get, and they should. It's all about the pandemic. So
what's your greatest hope? And before I ask the question, your points are really, really resonating, such as that about trust. Paul, thank you so much. And Bob Spangler agrees with Paul that, the trust conversation is absolutely perfect. So thanks, Paul and Bob, for sharing that.
yeah.
What was I going to ask, Mark?
I don't. You're going to ask me
I
how.
was too busy talking to Paul and Bob.
Mark, I love that shirt. If
I,
that's what you're going to ask, I love that shirt, and your hair looks good too.
yeah, thank you very much. It wasn't either of those. It wasn't either of those. But so you were talking about distribution liens in, right? And
Yeah,
yeah. What's your greatest hope? Okay, I'm going to go over when I'm done here, right? I'm going to go over to NAW and I'm going to go to the resource section and I'm going to go there. I'm going to pay my $39 or whatever it is, and I'm going to get that, right? These 12 stories or what have you. What's your greatest hope for those?
Here's my greatest hope. Please. My hope is that, and I'm an observer here. Yep. I listen and I repeat back and offer a little advice, but I'm hugely respectful of distributors because they carry the load. They're the business people, right? But my greatest hope is that we kind of launch a movement, right? That movement, I think you've been promoting this for a long time and talking about it. That movement is, hey, we're a $6 trillion industry. We're a third of the economy. We are not just about surviving. We can be a place where everyone comes together. We can, kind of deal with some of those polarization issues without becoming political, right? And distribution views itself as an essential part of B2B. We're a lever for change. We can help all of our customers live their lives and do their work better. And here's my greatest, if that movement catches fire, I think of it this way: innovation happens every day in small steps. And then you look back at it and it was like, wow, when did that happen? And Facebook is kind of the example of that. I think they were launched in 2004 or something like that. Yeah. So 15, 17 years, right? And now Facebook, they're global in some places around the world. Facebook is the internet. Yeah. So what I'm hoping is that, 10 or 15 years from now, we look back and we say B2B went through a radical change. Right. And B2B and that distribution led that change because we are at the tip of the spear, working with our superpower where customers actually live, where customers actually work, and we can be a force for change.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Thank you. And creating that movement, we do have to do some more talking. You can't see my wall behind the camera there, but
I researched movements when I was writing Innovate to Dominate, and I was reading about Lenin and people like that.
Sure.
And so there's three in that context, there's 2 or 3 criteria for a movement.
Tell me.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. One is a shared purpose.
Yep.
So this is why I like art with craft with a purpose, that we need to think about what our purpose is on several levels. Socioeconomic change down to on-time delivery. What is our purpose? What is my company's purpose, right? The second thing that Lenin and others do is they need to have a new language. Our choice of words, our like the language that's in Jobs to Be Done, right? And we can have other language that we use to drive the future. And the third is we need small working groups, right? That have the purpose, have the new language. And that can be, a lunch, get together over lunch and talk about the future of distribution. It's Unleash WD for sure. I've been to your events. They're wonderful.
Thank you.
It's what your buying groups can do, what your associations can do. Think horizontally. Maybe you can work with groups outside of distribution. But that kind of, purpose, language, and then intentional formation of groups to come together and push the ball forward. That's what creates a movement.
Boy, I love it. I love it. Thank you. And maybe I'll go out on a limb here and say this. I think the collective you mentioned some groups in there, and and from associations to buying groups to consulting organizations to the distributors themselves. I think we can do a hell of a lot better job at coming together, at really defining that shared purpose, because there's enough work to be done for all of us to create this movement.
Here's another key finding. I think there's 3 positioning statements for distribution, which are spelled out very early on in Distribution Liens In, right? One is that we should view ourselves and tell the world that we're a reservoir of resiliency, right? The second is that distribution exists to solve problems. I had more than one distributor leader say they were amazed at what their people did.
Yeah, Absolutely.
From finding PPE forever it was to throw Sydney Berry at Salon Selectives, a beauty pair.
Yeah.
They did what they're, early on in the pandemic, there were lots of stories about how the salon stylists were big trouble. What they did was they threw up a quick e-commerce website for the stylists to sell product to their clients who were home.
Yeah.
And then they went out and got world-class therapists experts in therapy to talk to the stylists using Zoom calls and those sort of things about the stress that stylists were feeling, and then how to counsel their clients when they got back in the chair. Right, that's an example of distribution at the center of commerce, of saying I can bring thought leaders, my AI vendor, manufacturer, a community organization. I can play a role where I bring those together to solve my customer's problem. If we do that, we're not an intermediary in the value chain anymore. So reservoir of resiliency, we exist to solve problems, and we're at the center of commerce.
Beautiful. Love it. Thank you. Yeah. So center of commerce, let's take a look. You mentioned earlier B2B. I know you've got some thinking, and you're doing some thinking and hard thinking relative to the future of B2B. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, in fact, I want to say one more thing about distribution liens in, if that's okay, before.
Yeah.
Distribution, I meant to say this earlier, it's got very long quotations by distributor leaders, followed by a little bit of what I think I means, but it's what I mean. What I would encourage people to do is read the quotations, create your own takeaways, right? That's how it's written. So future of B2B, I think we're going through revolutionary change. And I think that there are three forces of change, and they all start with D, right? The first is disruption, right? Now, disruption is change from the outside by Clayton Christensen's definition, right? It's not, we really, according to him, his definition, we cannot disrupt ourselves, right? What we can do is have an idea which is as big as what the outside disruptors are offering. So disruption is something we can study, and it's driving change in B2B.
Cool.
The second
hold on,
is
before you go to the second one, I want to understand, because you said something earlier about disruption that my interpretation was that you said that we got too caught up in disruption. And it took our eye off the ball of leading customers forward. But now you're telling us that it's one of the key fundamental forces. How do you put those things together?
The important thing to realize, and this is something I found out way back when I was researching Innovate to Dominate, in the innovation community outside of distribution, the people who think of themselves as innovative thought leaders have kind of noticed that the word innovation and disruption have become synonymous. Right? And disruption is from the outside. When we refer to the inside, we call ourselves incumbents or legacy companies, right? I hate those terms, right? So we have to know that disruption is happening, but we shouldn't be it shouldn't be a woe is me, how do I defend my business? We should be thinking about how do we have a purpose and a vision of change, which is just as powerful as the concept behind disruption, but it's from us. It's from the inside. It's about community betterment. It's about serving our customers. So we need to aim for an idea which is as big as disruption, but it's from the inside, not from the outside.
Got it. Thank you. Yep.
Second thing, there's a lot of new language and fresh energy around disintermediation, which is of course manufacturers selling around their distributor partners. And they are fully manufacturers, they see what we see. They see that digital marketing allows them to have direct relationships, two-way relationships with the end customers. They see that they can sell on a website. They see that they can use CRM. They see that they can do their version of omni-channel, right? And it's kind of like disruption. We need to tell manufacturers what our story is again, what our purpose is in the digital age. If they're going to do this, they need to know we're doing this. So we need to rise to the challenge of disintermediation and offer, not argue. They're our partners. Well, sometimes it's arguing, right? But clearly, sometimes very emotional arguing, right? But disintermediation is, again, something that manufacturers are doing that will totally reshape what B2B is, right? And then the third,
and the definition of what it means to strategically align.
yeah, yeah. But I've just launched a new newsletter. The newsletter is called Mark Dancer on Innovating B2B.
And what's the URL? How do I get there?
It's Mark Dancer at Substack.com.
Thank you. Mark Dancer at Substack.com. Thank you.
Right. And Substack, whole different discussion. They're a disruptor for the publishing industry.
Cool.
Right. And they offer turnkey newsletter podcast services for writers and creators. So I'm there. And so what'd you ask me? I forgot.
See, it's our age, dude. It's our age.
Oh, yeah.
After 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we're shot.
Where's that cocktail?
Let's go to the third D.
Okay. So what do you think the third D would be? If it's disruption and disintermediation are the two big concepts that are going to rewrite what all of B2B is.
Yep.
Right? What's the third D? Distribution. Right? Yep. So I know many manufacturers, and I tell them that the next edition of my newsletter, right? The first one is about customers have granted you the grace to innovate, right? Which means they're allowing you to make mistakes. Nice. They know during the pandemic we got to do things differently. You should be innovating the hell right now because you've got a fleet, you've got a free ride.
You've got an opportunity. I love the word grace. Yep.
It's conscious, right? The next edition is going to be the next newsletter published next week is going to be is the manufacturer distributor partnership stuck on stupid, right? Because
get after it.
All partnerships should be based on the two parties' business models, which are fundamentally different. Because if they weren't different, why would you be a partner, right? It's collaborative, and it should be designed not to what the business model is, or what it always should be. It should be designed to where the business model is headed, right? And I ask manufacturers all the time whether they know that distributors are front-end businesses now, that's where they're headed, right? That it's not, they still need to have a warehouse and stock products, although I've had distributors tell me that they would do business without that if they could. Good. Revolutionary concept, right? Yeah. But I don't think manufacturers know. I mean, manufacturer compensation plans, the vast majority of them, their pricing and discounts and rebates to distributors are still about getting them to load up on inventory because they think distributors serve demand. And if the product is there and a customer asks for it, they'll sell it. That's not where distributors' heads are at today, right? And so this third D, distribution, right? Starting with going to our partners and shaking them and making them listen, is the first step towards distribution being as much of a change agent as distribution and disruption, right? And then we'll go from there.
I love it.
Right?
Mark, what you bring me back to maybe 3 years ago, I did a pretty cool research for the National NAED, National Association of Electrical Distributors, their education foundation on strategic partnerships between manufacturers and distributors. And it was amazing what we found out that both manufacturers and distributors rightfully admitted that they did not understand each other's business models, and that we
when I started consulting, I was at Franklin Associates years ago in '89. Most of our clients are manufacturers. My job was to help them understand what a distributor was. They said the same thing then. It's forever, right?
No doubt. And I know you're thinking, I know these newsletters that you're going to be putting out, right? I know distribution leans in. I know everything that you started with Innovate to Dominate, right?
Yes.
Are just great works. Great works by a craftsman, if I can use that term for you, to bring these very important topics and insights to those of us who believe in the noble calling of distribution, right?
It is a noble calling. And if I can help further that in some way, throwing in a little passion and really sharing what distributors are doing, helping us think about foresight, which is your own personal view of what's ahead, helping us think about how to innovate, what's our process of innovation. If I can contribute to that in a small way, I'm very, very happy to do so.
You betcha. And Mark, I know that you are helping in much more than a small way. And I know myself and everybody else listening and tens of thousands of more are grateful for Mark Dancer, for your thinking, the work you do, the partnership you have with NAW as a fellow, and everything you're doing for the industry. So I really appreciate you coming on here and sharing your wisdom and insights, buddy.
Thank you for having me, Dirk, and thank you for letting me cut loose occasionally on what I think. I have a passion for this, and it's me wanting to make a difference where I am in my career. So if I can, my mission is to just talk to distributors and help them tell their stories, precipitate ideas out of it, and give a push. That's what I try to do.
Mark, and you do it in an amazing way. So thank you. Mark, thanks so much for doing this. Let's do this again, all right? And I really appreciate you, bud. You have a great afternoon, okay?
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Mark. We'll talk soon. Thanks. So there you go, you guys. What an amazing conversation with an amazing individual whose mind is not only in it to support this noble calling of distribution, but as you can see, his heart and soul is in this as well. I know I learn all the time that I'm with Mark Dancer, and I sure hope and I know that you did too as a result of this. So thank you all for joining us. If you liked what you heard here, would you please help Mark and please help me? Hit the thumbs up sign, share this video with everybody in your network, because the information that Mark shared with us is absolutely gold. So with that, until next time, go out there, keep disrupting, keep looking for that craft of what you do as a distributor, keep looking for those human outcomes that Mark talked about. And yeah, all right, Mark, I accept it, buddy. Let's lean in. And let's get out there and let's dominate. Let's innovate to dominate. Ted Stark, thank you, man, for being with us the whole time. I think it was a great conversation with Mark, so thank you so much. Everybody, thank you so much. We will see you later. Thanks for being here.